Right. You didn't tell us where the donations are. There's the donation jar on this table and at the front door.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you all for coming on this beautiful Mother's Day.
Yeah.
So for all of you Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day to you. And without further ado, I'm going to have Brigid take over here. We've had some technical issues. I don't know if you've noticed, so hopefully this all works. And one last thing, I'll keep it quick. We are recording it. Hope everybody's okay with that. And Brigid, you're on.
Well, thank you. Yeah, the technical issues, if they continue, we might as well shut her down because, it's not very fun looking at a bunch of blank screens. So, hi everybody. Welcome to the little history of, this is mostly Whaletown because by the time I was 10 years old, I'd only been to Manson's maybe 5 times or something. So, yeah, it was until my mother won the car, which will show up a bit later in the talk. Okay. My mom and dad came to Whaletown in 1947, and I'm going to give you a bit of backstory on who they were before they got here, because they have an interesting history. They were both third generations from pioneer families. So my dad was born in Victoria, and his grandfather originally came there from San Francisco, well, from Germany, but via the San Francisco Gold Rush, where he had made a considerable fortune. And then my great-great-grandmother, I guess she's named Christiana, she came across the United States on a covered wagon. And they met in San Francisco, met and married, and then started having kids, and decided that San Francisco was too lawless of a place to raise a family. So they came to Victoria, and that was in 1860. And he continued making his fortune as he opened a furniture factory. He was something of a mercantile genius, I think. So by the time my dad was born in 1903, the family owned a department store, which is, if you go down Government Street, it's still called the Weiler Building. And they had a beautiful house in Beacon Hill Park that was designed by Rattenbury, who designed the Parliament Building specifically for my dad to be born in. And so by then, and I think for a while, John Weiler, who was my dad's grandpa, I believe he had a fleet of ships that were going to the Sandwich Islands and stuff. And so they did pretty well. And so when my dad inherited all of it, and he was, I think, 32 years old, and so he had this tremendous fortune. And then he made some kind of investment about 5 minutes before the Depression started. So that was that. He decided to leave Victoria because he was just losing everything he had. So he just went off up to Whistler for a couple of years, which was remote wilderness then. And he did trapping and prospecting. And by the time he came back a couple of years later, he didn't own anything. He said he and his best friend made marmalade in his friend's basement and sold it door to door. So my dad was very highly educated. He had been educated all over the world. And so he decided, and one of the things he did was write. So he became a journalist for the Parliamentary Press Corps. And then he eventually, when war broke out, he joined the Canadian Scottish Regiment and went to England. And where he met my mom. My mom was born in Enderby, and again, third generation, and her family had been there since about mid-1880s or something. And eventually they relocated to New Westminster. And when she was 18, she went and got her nursing, or RN, at the Royal Jubilee Hospital, and then she went off to Port Alberni and got a job in a hospital and saved up all her Depression-era nurses' wages, which must have been quite remarkably small. But she saved up enough to catch a bus to New York City and a freighter to France and got a job working in a hospital in France. She was 23. Her friends all thought she was crazy because, young women didn't do stuff like that back in those days. So she was there, and as, of course, the clouds of war are gathering, but you're young, you're on an adventure. But anyway, it came to pass that Germany invaded France while she was there. So she managed to get down to the coast. She got evacuated at Dunkirk, which is not a thing that civilians usually did. And so she said she stood in a trench for a couple of days and nights being bombed. And then she managed to get evacuated out, went to Britain and joined the British Army. So, my mom and dad met at a dance in London. Yeah. The officers would charter, what did they do exactly? They would rent a hall and a band, and then they would charter a bus, and then they had some way where the bus went around and collected up all these nurses and brought them to dance with them. so that's where my mom and dad met. Yeah, what a random event, right? And so the war progressed, and eventually it was over. I mean, my parents didn't get back to Canada till 1947, or 6, I think. And now they were together. They could live their dream. They could be happy together. So they decided that they were going to charter a boat, come up the coast, and find a place where they could live a happy, romantic, bohemian life. So they sailed. Oh, see, it went away. Never mind. They sailed into Whaletown Bay.
Having technical issues here.
And don't worry about it.
You know what we could do
What's that?
is you just say next slide and I'll control this part.
We could do that.
You want to try that?
Sure, let's see if
Might
it
have
works.
to keep it alive. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
I
go
think
to
that's
sleep.
what it is. Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so that house, which was on the screen for a while there, was half built at the time. And I think they paid, well, certainly under $5,000 for 5 acres of waterfront and a half-built house. And it's like, it was not valuable here. It didn't have marketable timber. It didn't have arable land. So nobody here wanted it. Ken Slater turned it down for $75. And so the picture you were looking at before, that's a little, you can see all the diapers hanging on the line. So we've kind of jumped a few years here, but yeah. Okay, next one. Hey, all right. Okay, Mary Weiler, carefree days before having children, painting over on Marina Island. And also in the 40s, I would think, yeah.
So where's this painting? Where's she sitting?
She's on Marina Island. I'm not sure, you'd have to, I'm not exactly sure of the, yeah. But that's somewhere over there, anyway. Yeah,
And that's your mom.
that's my mom.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can go, yeah. Okay, and that's my dad on the right, Otto Weiler, and John Nagel on the left. When my parents first got here, they actually first got trying to figure out how to make a living. They did commercial fishing. They bought a little 12-foot boat. They rigged it up with poles. You could get a salmon license for $1 a year. And so they fished for that period of time. And then my dad got hired to run the store with his friend John Nagel. And so was the Whaletown Trading Post at that time. Yeah. And they were in the store for probably 5 years or something. And then Gary and Velma Bergman bought the store. So my dad moved over to the post office. Yeah, there we go. That's where it was a couple of moves ago, okay? Before it went to the gorge, it was already across the road, and the parking lot where it was actually landfill. Prior to that, the road had just been, and right there in the spot, there was a house on stilts that was kind of, it was very derelict by then. Anyway, they did the landfill, and they hauled the post office across the way, and then now, as we know, it's moved down onto by the Gorge Hall there. So my dad was the postmaster for a couple, probably 20-odd years, maybe? Yeah. And he was essentially forced into retirement at 65, as happened in those days, and he didn't want to retire. So he was compelled to put up a sign in the lobby saying that the job was available. So he did that, but he put it under all the other posters. So nobody, so the only person that knew the job was available was my mom. She applied, got the job, and then our Audie just kept on working in the post office right till the end of his days. Yeah, and so let's see what we got coming up next here. Okay, so as the time went by, my mom started teaching art classes on the island, and she also became the community nurse, which we'll get to in a bit. But this is Whaletown School, and so we have Don McDevitt, who was the teacher for the whole time I was going there. We have Bernard Woodward, who lived in the Gorge. We have Edie Huck. And so she put on quite a lot of art classes, and people would kind of stuff themselves into the kids' desk, you know. If they got first seating in the grade 6 row, they were more comfortable, I'm sure. And so this was something that happened a lot, was these classes. And my mom, she also taught kids' classes, and as she was an artist of great talent and passion, quite well known in BC at that time. Yeah, a little further on, we'll have pictures of the little art gallery we had and stuff. But yeah, so Mary Weiler, yeah, she was at that time quite well known, and even without a ferry or a telephone, she still managed to, have art shows and travel up and down the coast and stuff. I don't know how she pulled it off, but anyway. So yeah, so that was, and for me, it's kind of fun to look at the pictures of Whaletown School when I was going to it, because, of course, I mean, even when I go to the art gallery now, it still looks like my old school. Yeah. Okay, we'll go. Yeah, okay. The church. Okay. The church was actually designed by Kathleen Bowes. She was essentially the architect who designed it. It was built by volunteer people, and this was in 1950. Okay. Now, prior to this, there was a church up by where the ferry road goes now, and a hall, which we'll get to the church hall later, because that's a big part of our history as well. So. And my dad said, his name was Otto, right? And he said, this is the Church of St. John the Baptist, but my dad convinced us children that they were going to call it the Church of St. Otto the Martyr. So at this time, so because the Columbia Coast Mission, the mission house is next to it, and then the clinic building, which is still there, and which was built a year later, okay? So the Columbia Coast Mission, they had a fleet of ships, basically. So one of their ships at a time would be the one that was here. And they were very much into service. So the ships were available. They would take people for medevacs, and they would all kinds of, there was 3 of them during my lifetime, and I got seasick on all of them, actually. So basically, the clinic building was built next by, again, the Columbia Coast Mission to provide a modicum of some kind of medical care here. Okay, so the clinic building, we had a doctor come from Campbell River once a month, weather permitting, which it often didn't. Again, it would be on the mission boat. And then there was a dentist office, which dentists would come and torture us once a year, running drills off old diesel generator that just cycled up and down. And there was also a medical office for the doctor to come to, okay? One time when the dentist came, my mom would generally, she was a nurse, not officially anymore, but she had the skills. So she would come and be the nurse for the dentist, and I once got hired to be the clinic cleaner. I was 12, I think, and I had a really good time pouring the mercury out of the jar and playing with it and rolling it around on my hands and rolling it around on the table and being a little afraid I wouldn't be able to get it back in and all that for mercury amalgam fillings, right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, oh, yes. I mean, nobody knew anything about mercury, but still, it wasn't a thing I would have been allowed to do. So. Yeah. I used to make my own mercury in school. I would use a Bunsen burner and put in mercuric oxide and make mercury to play with. Yeah, yeah. Well, there was a lot of asbestos around then, too. So what have we got next? Okay, so this is the John Ansell, I think it is. Is that what it says? Yeah, I have a couple pictures of it here. This is Whaletown Wharf before Gary and Velma bought the store. And so the fish scow at the end, that's where the fishermen would sell their fish. But it was actually moved up to here by the time I got to know the dock. But that was one of the mission ships. And this Whaletown was a really busy seaport then. There was up to 30 fishermen fishers out of Whaletown in the summertime. Wow. Some local, some who had just come up for the season, yeah. And it was a bustling little place, and the store had like gas and water on the dock, and the post office was there, the library was there, and the church was, and then on boat day, which was Wednesdays, which was when the steamship came, basically everything was open. I think we even had Sunday school on Wednesdays, actually, because that's when people came down there, right? So, okay, my dad is the postmaster, and so he has to meet the boat, which was just always called the boat. He has to meet the boat to get the mail, and you never knew when the boat was coming. Like they didn't have a fixed schedule because, times say if it was bad weather or, something else, and so pretty often the boat would come in the middle of the night. Oh. And so the skipper would shine his big searchlight into my parents' bedroom, and my dad would jump up and blink the flashlight, and then they would know he was up. So they didn't have to blow the big whistle and open, wake up the whole community who didn't like that, right? So, yeah. So that was a little bit about the Whaletown Wharf. I think we've got another picture or two. Let's have a look. Yeah, again, the drawn antle, just another view of it. Yeah, lots of times it was super busy. I actually lived I had my own boat, and I lived aboard on this dock years after this, but yeah. And yeah, so, okay, let's see, we'll move on from that. Okay, that's just another view of the wharf, basically, from around that time. It looks like, is the boat in? Looks like the boat's in. Yeah, and that was where it tied up all the time, was there.
It's like a Model T right there.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. There wasn't very many cars in Whaletown at that time, but the ones that were there are pretty cool in old photographs. Yeah. When I was a little kid, and we'd sometimes, you'd walk to school, and every now and then, it was pouring rain or something, and so somebody would be driving by, which didn't happen all that often, and would ask us kids, would you like a ride? And we would say yes, and then I'd go home and I'd tell my mom, and she'd be like, well, did you say thanks for the ride to Mrs. Robertson? And I'd be like, yes, but I was too shy. I didn't actually say it. Okay. So I want to talk a bit about the church hall, because we just looked at the church. It's kind of interesting. Well, it's a very interesting part of our history. There used to be the church hall and the church. And I don't know, were they built in 1915, something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because I have a photograph. It's a beautiful picture of the church hall when it was new. So I remember it as being pretty old. I think it was still in use for a couple of years after, I think my older sister remembers going to a movie in there. But eventually, what happened was this. That was the Whaletown Hall. So back in the, 28 or 9? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong here. Gorge Harbor Young People's Dramatic Society formed, and they put on a play. And there was no Gorge Hall then. They put the play on up at the church hall, and people walked in from all over the island, and there wasn't room for everybody in the hall. So it was determined that it was necessary to have a new hall. So the family of one of the young people, who were people like, the Young People's Society was, Pat and Dunk Robertson, Bill and Bobby Ballantyne, they're like 12 to 20 sort of. Anyway, so they put on this play, and so it became obvious that the community needed a beer hall. So that was the beginnings of the Gorge Hall. And even though Gorge was not part of the Whaletown community at all, the communities were completely separate. But there it was, and so then they had the hall, and then the war came, and so the Dramatic Society folded, and then after the war, it was called the Gorge Harbor Association or Society then, correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, they decided they'd give the hall either to the community club, Whaletown Community Club, or the Women's Institute. And so the community club won out on that one. Even though all the people were the exact same, there was still, and as a kid, we didn't always have community events at the hall. I have a photo in here of a Halloween party at the clinic, actually. Let's see, where are we at here? Oh, this is just another wharf picture. And, that's a picture of Mr. Hammond. And I put that here because I was thinking, the way that the old-timers lived, whether it was here, over in Whaletown or here, was just such an interesting time that we got to be kind of at the tail end of, if you will. Like the Hammond place, that's where Freddie and Sandra live, and, that whole field there. But this was a farm then. And us children used to toboggan there. And we used to go, and there was a pond in the woods as well, and when it was freezing, a bunch of us would go in there and we'd spend the whole day. We were not supposed to light fires and stuff, but we constantly did to burn the grass off the pond because nobody knew what kids were doing in those days at all. So I just thought, I don't have a lot of room. There's so many people, so many characters, so many people that shape the communities that this talk can't cover, Otherwise I'd have to put on a big slideshow and not talk. So anyway, yeah. I just like that picture. I thought it was great. Oh yeah, Mr. Hammond. My dad said that Mr. Hammond, when he was about 90, ordered a 20-year subscription for a magazine. so that's kind of who the old timers were. Yeah. So we can move away from that.
What do you
I'm still looking at Mr. Hammond
Oh.
before we move on here.
Oh,
If our technology is, what's that?
Was there a Miss?
Oh, yes, yeah, if she was, yes, yeah, her name was Grandma Hammond, of course. Yeah. There was a few grandmas around.
it's not syncing, so I'm just gonna do a quick
Okay.
disconnect and reconnect.
And any questions, by the way?
Do you remember the name of the play?
I don't anymore. Andy Bobby told me and I forget. She said it was like a really famous play. Yeah, but I don't remember. Oh, Whaletown School in my last year. Just all of us. Yeah.
You there?
I'm grade 6. Pat McCoy is grade 5. Cheryl Matthews is grade 4. Johnny is grade 3. Heather McLean is grade 2. Ian and Jeannie are grade 1. In Whaletown School, generally, like I was there about 5 years because I ended up skipping a grade because the teacher thought it'd be nice for me to have another kid in the same grade as me. But I would guess, this was the smallest I think legally it could be, 7 children. But sometimes there was 15 kids there. People came and went, and families moved away and arrived and stuff. It was never exactly huge, but.
So what about Manson's? Like, did they have a school, or did
Oh, yeah.
people from Manson? Okay, so
No,
it was like
no,
two
Manson's had a school. They had a couple. I don't know much about Manson's history, I have to say. But I went to school from Whaletown. I started grade 7 there and went on the bus. And because of going to school like this for 6 years, it was such an urban experience for me that I wept in the cloakroom from shyness. I didn't know any of the kids. Yeah. So yeah, there was a lot of other schools. There was a school, and I can't really be. There was one in Squirrel Cove. There was one a long time ago. Wasn't there one in Seaford as well? Yeah. And there was one in Rondonnet. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very distinguished looking teacher.
Mr. McDevitt, yes. He was our teacher for the whole time I was going to school there, Don McDevitt, yeah. I was telling my granddaughters about sometimes in the wintertime in that school, there was of course no electricity then, and on a really, really dark winter morning, and it's blowing southeast and pouring rain, you can't see, and so he would haul out a big ladder and he'd climb all the way up to the ceiling, which was, up there, and light gas lamps. Yeah, so when I told my granddaughters about that, Mila's like, Grandma, can you tell us more about the olden days? Also in that school, we used to, there was a pond at the bottom of the schoolyard, and there was, the field was way bigger because it went way off the school property, but nobody seemed to care much about that. So a great big field, and so we would dam up the pond every fall, and all of us children would be out there beavering away every lunch and recess to dam the pond up to make a skating rink. Yeah, which sometimes that worked. Yeah, and the other thing about that schoolyard was, well, there was a couple of horses hanging out there all the time. There was the neighbors' Jersey cows that were so tame that us children would go and sit on them, and then there was all of Ken Hansen's cows would be around Whaletown because he'd drive them over to Whaletown every spring, so they didn't get into his own neighbors' gardens because, free range, right? You got to fence them out. So, I mean, maybe I'm is that libel or slander? Anyway, so the cows would hang out, and when it was like sports day, we'd have a sawdust pit to practice our jumping in and stuff for the big Inter-Island Sports Day, which was a big deal. There's at least half a dozen schools participated from up and around the coast. But the cows also like to go and poo in it. Oh. Yeah. So there's a lot, and we didn't have any playground equipment. Well, no, there was a really dangerous teeter-totter thing. It would easily kill you, and there was a swing, which like a porch swing, that you could easily get your fingers stuck in the thing, and I think we had a baseball bat. That was it. But we had the play shed. Okay, play shed's gone now, but that was open, pretty much open. It was boarded up to about here. It had chicken wire on it, and some rafters with planks across them. And the more daring of the kids would climb up the chicken wire and walk around up on the planks. There was no teacher supervision or anything those days. And there wasn't a basketball hoop or anything. Yeah. I don't know anybody from my era that didn't survive the experience, however.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The climbing frame still there? Or until not that long ago?
I'm not sure, actually. Yeah. That was put in during a LIP grant or something, and hired a bunch of hippies. Yeah.
Brigid,
Yes.
speaking of surviving, you mentioned the story about you finding that saw.
Oh, yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so at the top, talking about Hammond's Field, and that might have been part of the reason I put Mr. Hammond in.
That was fun.
What's that?
The saw story.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Well, so Cheryl Matthews and I were 7 and 8, I think, and we found a crosscut saw in the bush. It's like, oh, it's not there right now. But anyway,
Here, I can.
it had both its all right. It had both its handles. Okay, so it's a great big long saw, and usually when we found those in the bush, they didn't have handles. But this one was absolute treasure. So we hauled it out and decided to cut a tree down. And there was a great big alder at the top of the field. So every day after school, we would go down and saw away. And finally, it came crashing down, and we were just like, wow, you know. So we ran down to tell Cheryl's dad, and he's a logger, and he said, did you kids undercut that tree? And we're like, what's that? So I think we got into a little trouble on that one. And one of the things about, being a kid here is that you'd come home from school, you'd change into your play clothes, and you were gone. It wasn't like your parents knew where you were going or what you were going to do and stuff. And, we had to be home by dinner. And so we weren't allowed to double ride on our bikes. We weren't allowed to play in abandoned houses full of glass and broken crockery and stuff. And we did it all the time. Who knew, It was and I'm sure we climbed really dangerous trees and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, yeah, being a kid here, it was so much fun. And one of the even most exciting was there were so many old abandoned orchards, and we loved that. And we'd go to the orchards and we would pick apples and stuff, and all these different kinds of apples are a treat, back in the day. And there was 2 horses named Bill and Duchess that I know that the Duchess belonged to Mrs. Whiting. I don't know who owned Bill, but anyway, they were free roaming. They were on their own. So us kids would be like, let's find the horses. And so we'd do that, and we'd roam all over the place, and we'd pretend to be cowboys and lie down, put our ear on the road, and see if we could hear the drumming hoofbeats and stuff. And so we didn't ride Duchess. She was very old and sway back, but we did ride Bill, and he could accommodate more than one rider at a time if they were small, because he was a big Clydesdale gelding. And that was so much fun too. That was what we did. Yeah. So any questions from anyone so far?
How did you get on?
Well, we back him up to a stump. Or sometimes a piece of farm equipment or something. Yeah, yeah.
Were you born on Cortes, or
What?
what age did you come to Cortes?
I was born in Campbell River and came to Cortes at the age of about a week.
Okay, so you
Because my family were here, yeah. And I was the second of 4 daughters. And so whenever my mom was about to have a baby, she'd go to town and stay with the Haig Browns for a couple weeks and then have a baby and come back. And so when I arrived here, it was summer, June 6th. Fishing fleet was in. My mom came home maybe on a mission boat or I don't know how. But anyway, she walked up the wharf with me. All the fishermen came out to congratulate her. And I screamed my head off all the way up the wharf. And she was like... So that's how I arrived on Cortes. And that was in 1953.
Kicking and screaming.
And was there a ferry at that time?
No, ferry came in 1969.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just skiff or something to get to town?
What's that?
Like a skiff to get to town?
No, it's hard to get to Campbell River in a skiff most of the time with the weather we have here. No, we didn't go to town. My dad didn't go once for 17 years, and he just didn't. My mom would go a couple times a year to do banking and, buy things you couldn't get on Cortes and all that kind of stuff. The freight, because the Union Steamship brought what we needed, basics, And sometimes my mom would take one of us, and I remember Chris and I both had the same experience. We went to Harriet Bay. There was a taxi back then, a big old taxi, like a British taxi. And we'd go over to Q Cove, and then my mom, I remember her taking me to this little store there, and my mom took me up there and bought me a banana, which I never had a banana because they couldn't keep them on the ship and stuff and for the Whaletown store, It was a huge treat. Yeah. Yeah.
The mission ships, the John Anton.
Yes.
I mean, there was a number of Columbias. I didn't
3.
know that one. Was that previous
No,
to
the
this one?
Columbias were north of us.
Oh, okay.
So the Columbia was a hospital ship,
Right.
okay? And Cannon Green actually skippered that. And it was not only a hospital ship, but they also did marriages and burials and stuff. And that was, in the 50s, I think, the most current.
Mom had
an uncle that was a doctor on the Columbia
Okay.
in the 50s, and that's why I
Right,
wondered if you-
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no, and the Columbia would sometimes come into Whaletown though. And I, as a little kid, watching boats going by all the time, I knew that there was something very special about that ship. She is a beautiful ship, yeah, yeah. So,
Okay, so
yeah.
different.
I'm really curious, fast forwarding a little bit in your life.
yeah.
You have such knowledge of all of the plants and everything on the island and the mushrooms. I'm wondering, like, did you have certain knowledge keepers that you were learning from, or did you just amass that knowledge on your own over time, or?
Yeah, on my own.
Community that.
My
Can you, Brigid,
Yeah.
just for the record, can you repeat the question so that
Oh,
we-
yes, I was just asked if because I, work a lot with plants and mushrooms and stuff, did I have people here who taught me those things, knowledge keepers in the community? No, my family were hunter-gatherers. And so I learned a lot, and I also kept, like, for example, I think the museum has my bird book that I had when I was 5 or 6, identifying birds and stuff. Yeah, and then a lot of, we're out on the boat all the time fishing because we lived on fish. So you learn a lot about the oceans, and you learn about the beaches, and you learn about the animals that live in. So yeah, that was basically how that came to be. Yeah, mushrooms my parents were afraid of. They came from a British tradition thinking that if you stepped and touched a mushroom with your foot, you would die. So I had to figure, I had to figure that one out for myself. How are we doing for time?
Was this
We're
how,
doing good.
Yeah?
I get some more slides going, so if you want to keep talking.
Oh yeah, I just don't want to run over time, and
oh, is this Halloween? There seems to be something.
Yeah, this is a Halloween party, and it's in the Whaletown Clinic. As I said, we did have. That's my sister Johnny beside me, dressed as a sewing, a dressmaker's last thing. Yeah. And that's Gary Bergman behind her. Yeah, and that's me, Cheryl Matthews. I can't remember who the other kids are, or I can't see them well
What's that
enough.
thing on his head? What is it? A candle? Is that what it is?
On which?
This one here.
Her?
The golden
there's-
head.
There's something above on the mantelpiece, I think. Anyway, I'm not sure.
I'd like to know what it is. Maybe a candle flame.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, so I'm the gypsy girl there. I was getting into my teens. I didn't want to, I had to have something, kind of glamorous to put on for costume. So the clinic building, it was used for something like this, a community thing. One of the things was that for a lot of Whaletown people, walking to the Gorge Hall was far. So it was, it was easier for the community. I remember Santa Claus coming to Whaletown School one time too. But and also the clinic building was occasionally used for community club meetings. And when I was community club president and was reading through all the minutes, and there was a thing about, they had the annual general meeting there for the community club in the hall, and written in my dad's, he was the secretary in those days, some elegant, illegible scrawl, that they showed moving pictures in order to entice people to come to the AGM. And the moving pictures, one of them, I remember 2 of them. One of them was the building of the Dease Island Tunnel, and the other, and the other was a fantasy story about a little boy who stole an airplane. So yeah, that was probably the first moving pictures I ever saw. Yeah, when I was 9 or 10, maybe, something like that.
The dressmaker's dummy is absolutely.
Yeah, my sister Johnny put that together all by herself. Yeah.
The hole for the eyes.
Good eyes.
You want me to show the next one?
Yeah, let's have a look. See what we got coming up here. Oh, God. One of my all-time favorite pictures of Velma Bergman on the Whaletown docks slinging fish into the weigh scale wearing capris and white shoes. Now, she said that she never did that, but hello, a picture is worth... Yeah. A picture is definitely worth 1,000 words. And this is the garden gallery. This is our art gallery. And my mom, it was a showcase for her work, but she also invited anybody on the island to put things into the gallery as well. Yeah, so we had, beautiful First Nations work from Clahoose. We had Mrs. Robertson's delicious pies. We had anybody who was creative and wanted to be in the gallery could be. I think she charged maybe a 10% commission or something. So yeah, so there's a couple of, and these are some of her pieces here, but she also had a couple of tables set up with all these other pieces on them. And I worked in the summers at the gallery for my parents, so,
So,
yeah.
Brig,
Yeah.
your mom was a nurse, so the doctor came once a month, but shit happened more than once a
Oh,
month. you know?
yeah.
So it's like, would they just show up at your door, or would like she be kind of on standby the rest of the time?
She was always on standby. She was the only nurse here. She had a medical kit. Again, this is not official. There was just nobody else. So she had a medical kit that the doctors gave her some morphine because even though it was illegal, it was necessary. And we didn't have a telephone. So it would be the knock on the door in the night. Yeah, and she'd be off doing whatever she could do.
Form of a nurse practitioner, really.
What's that?
The original form of a nurse practitioner.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Your mother put a clamp in my head one time.
Oh,
This is
jeez.
here because we were just kids in Whale Town.
Sure.
And there was an old tractor there, still there on the Robertson farm, and it didn't run.
Yeah.
And there was an apple tree right here, and we were always playing on this thing.
Of course.
Andy Robertson, of course, him and I were always fighting about who was gonna drive the tractor. Of course, it didn't run. And he was gonna drive it one day, and I was gonna drive it. When I went to get on it, he hit me on the head with a hammer.
Oh.
Then Matthew come along and said, "Oh, you need a clamp in there," so they took me down to see your mother.
Right.
Cut the hair off there and put a clamp in there.
Amazing. Wow.
So I still got a scar from that.
Great story. I should turn the talk over to the audience here. Yeah.
Did your mother end up delivering babies?
She was really scared of that because the only one she'd ever delivered was 4 of us, and she was an army nurse. And so when the hippies moved here and started having babies and root cellars and stuff, she went to the hospital and asked them there, the doctors, if they would allow her to witness a couple of births in case she was on the spot for that. But I don't think anybody actually did have a baby on her watch. I'm pretty sure not. Yeah. But she had a bunch of other, I remember her lancing boils and stuff in our living room, and stuff like that. And also there was a bit of really in those days, it was pretty rough and tumble, and there would be fighting, and there would be knifing and stuff like that. And that happened. And I remember she had to deal with something like that over at Squirrel Cove once. Irv and Doreen had the store then, and I guess my mom went in for tea after, and in the middle of the night, it was probably 3 in the morning, and Irv says, doesn't bother me if somebody comes in here with their head under their arm, but Doreen doesn't like it so much. So yeah, the whole medical situation. There was no medical situation at all. It was just, and before my mom, it was Kathleen Bowes did that. And when my parents came there, the Bowes left shortly after, and so she was on the hook for that stuff. I remember somebody died of a heart attack on the dock, and she'd get the call. Yeah. And the thing was, there was occasionally people would get medevaced out by a plane, but it wasn't common. That was before BC Airlines and having scheduled flights and stuff. So it would be the mission boat, it would be anybody with an available boat, or it would be, they would die here sometimes. It was like that, So I can't tell you how much I love having what we have here and how much I don't pay any attention to people complaining about it. Well, to illustrate that, when I was 4, my younger sister Johnny was 2, Chris was 6, and my mom and whooping cough hit the community. My mother ended up in the hospital having a miscarriage. She'd been medevaced off the island. My dad is at home with a deathly ill 2-year-old, 4-year-old, and 6-year-old, and I remember him hanging me over the back of his armchair in front of the fireplace to try to get me an airway, and then going up the stairs with the kerosene lamp to look after the other kids. And there was no phone. He didn't know if his wife was alive or dead. He didn't know anything, Yeah. So, yes.
What was the first phone on the island? Was there just one line and everybody had to share it?
Well, I can't address that. Other persons from here. It was the Women's Institute, though, wasn't it? The first phones? Yeah.
In Whaletown.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was
Right.
a local.
Yeah. The Grapevine.
In Whaletown,
Yeah.
and then there was one in Manson's.
Right.
Also.
And
These spoons on the walls, those spoons?
Yes.
yeah, we had one of those. And my first phone, we didn't even get a phone till I was 14 or something because they rang in every house. And my mom was an artist trying to do work in the living room. And finally, when I was 14, my dad got one in his post office, so he was there 3 or 4 hours a day. And it was like if you had to, well, this was still an on-island phone. You know, by then we did have off-island phones in the stores, and in a few different private homes and stuff. But for the most part, yeah, that was our phone service. And our first number was Cortes 4H, 1 long, 2 shorts, and a long. And by that time, there was actually 4 party lines here, so you didn't have to everybody's phone ringing in your house, just your own party line, which was plenty. Yeah. Yeah. The advantage was you could pick up your phone from other people's houses, and you could listen in on the line too. And if and well, listening in on the line, the more people who picked up, the dimmer the tone got. Yeah. Yeah. And the off-island phones, the phone operator in Campbell River was named Rose Mackay, but she was an avid gardener, so there was a lot of time you couldn't raise her, and she was the operator. But there she was, out working in her garden. Well, who wouldn't be? So,
What's burning down?
what's that?
We're just looking at.
Oh, that's the ferry being blasted.
Oh.
Yeah. And I love to sit there. I would be sitting that was on our property there. So they're blasting out the beach and rocks and road and everything to put there. Yeah, because there was nothing down, it was just a private driveway down there. And they had to put in a road. And it was the beach and cliffs. And I found it so interesting because, you know, there's a little time lag between you see it go up and then you hear the noise. It's fascinating. Yeah, so what they'd do, they would blow a number of blasts on a whistle to get all the boats to leave that had any kind of electronic equipment that might be bothered by it, and then they'd put up the blast. Yeah, and I was 14, and I'd sit here in the summer and I'd watch the blasting, and I would think that by the time I was old enough to leave home, there wouldn't be anything fun happening anymore, and my life was over before it began. That's what I thought at 14. Yeah. So let's get to the car. Oh, this is the Brownie Museum. So this is our first museum on Cortes. Yeah. And us children, it was in our woods, and our children, us children, me and my sisters and some friends, we put this together. And so, and it was in our woods, and so people would come down to our gallery. And the gallery was really very famous. And there was again before the ferry, so it would be all yacht people that would come. And then they'd take posters for it all up and down the coast. And a lot of people came in and saw it. Yeah, I know. And this got a fair amount of interest as well.
There's a skull there.
Well, yes.
Go back to the skull for a second. Where did that skull come from?
I hate to say this, but it was from burial caves out at the mouth of the gorge. It was a different era. Yeah, that's where it came from.
Do not touch the optical.
I know. So that was our old light plant shed, the generator. Yes.
Remember, we got a lot of stuff out of Burnside
Yeah.
because everybody left and we go to other
Yeah.
house and pick up little things. And we also had a naturalist section with plants, and we'd identify all the plants and have those. for
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If we can get to Mary's car.
We'll get there in a second.
Okay. I don't know if the car's next, but it's got to be coming up.
It's coming up.
There's a bullfight that's coming up.
Oh yeah, the bullfight. That was Rosita Ashby. And some of you will remember Rotary, of course. And all the Whaletown teenagers. She did Spanish dancing classes. So yes, yeah, it was so fun. Okay, yeah, there she is. That's Pat McDonnell as the matador, and a guy named Lloyd as the bull, and that's Janice McLean there, my sister, and Heather McLean, Noreen Riddell in the cowboy outfit, and I'm not sure who else, but anyway, yeah, it was so much fun. We had some great theater back in the day in the Gorge Hall before most people here would ever know about them, and of course there was no video. So, but anyway, we have Dangerous Don McClam coming up as part of one of those, I believe.
Should switch.
Okay, how are we doing? May or may not.
We're going to take a ball peen hammer to this.
Yeah, there you go. So, I'll tell you, okay, how many people here know the story of my mom's car? Yeah, there's still a few. Yeah, I was in the store the other day and Victoria said that Bert Summers was just referring to that event. So we didn't have a car, and so we walked everywhere, and that was just how it was. And but there was a contest put on by Kellogg's Corn Flakes. Nope. Oh well. You don't get to see this car. I tell you, I still jones for this car. We didn't. My mother traded it in on a station wagon. How she could have done this to us, I don't know. It was a Ford Falcon convertible with red leather bucket seats. And my sister Chris and I were 12 and 10, and we envisioned ourselves, you know, with the top down and our hair flowing in the wind. And then she went and traded in on a station wagon. She with 4 kids, and the roads were terrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, and she didn't know how to drive. Don McLean taught her how to drive, and she never looked back.
How did she get the car?
Well, barged over. What happened was, okay, all the housewives in Whaletown had been in this contest. So it happens to be boat day, and people are in the store, and Velma's on the phone going, congratulations, because it was a telegram sent to the store. Congratulations, you are, you know, the proud winner of a blah, blah, blah. Everybody's jumping up and down and going, who won? Who won? And so she goes tearing up to my house. She wouldn't tell anybody. And she flung herself into my mom's arms, even though they weren't usually on hugging terms. So Mary won that car, and it was really a gorgeous one. And yeah, so after that, she started documenting a lot about Cortes. She documented, she'd follow the school bus, she'd follow the mail delivery, and all, you know, all these different things, and photograph stuff. And she really was an excellent photographer. You know, I only have about still, I don't know how many thousand slides of hers left. And when did she pass away? 1999? Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh well.
We're experiencing technical difficulties.
That's all right, Brian.
You can just keep talking.
I will.
It's a lovely car.
Yeah.
Did your dad drive the car too?
Oh yeah. But he was embarrassing because he only drove about 15 miles an hour, and we were so, you know, he'd be driving us to a dance. God bless him. And well, we were all like embarrassed because our dad drove so slow. Even though he would come and bring a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds to a dance and stay there till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have anything to complain about. Yeah. You know. Yeah. So where are we now? Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about. Too bad. There's a couple of pictures that would be so nice to see. There's a picture of the road washout. This is down at the gorge. Okay, now at the far end of the gorge, what we called it then. So not the marina end, but this end. And so where the Gorge Creek is, you know, the one that has the salmon and stuff. So there's 2 bridges, and it washed out between the bridges, and it was absolutely devastation all the way down to the sea with just rocks and stuff like that. And so the mail at that point came to Manson's, and then the Manson's postmaster would bring it to Whaletown and Squirrel Cove and Cortes Bay in those days. And so he could bring it to one end of the washout. Me and my sister and somebody, I forget, other kids, my mom would take us down to the other side, and then we would hike across the Great Divide. And the one picture I have is, it was Christmas catalogs, so heavy mail, lots of heavy mail sacks that we were hauling across this really sort of difficult, rocky terrain. And that lasted for a whole month. Yeah. But that reminded me, I was telling Brian, there was another event that lasted. Oh, there's the car. And this is, my mom had to go to Vancouver and be on TV to accept the car.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Those were the days.
Yeah, I tell you. So she went to Vancouver, and that's a very young Norm Groman. And so there we go. That's Mary and the car. So yeah, isn't it beautiful? I look it up online sometimes and see it would be possible to still get one. This is 1963. So yeah.
You're looking for the washout, right?
Yeah. There you go. Here's the washout.
Oh, where the Fultons are, huh?
No, on this side of it. This is this side of the creek, and that was a store actually, which was later floated out. The houses there were always getting floated in and out. There used to be a very elegant resort there in the 30s. And when my Auntie Bobby was 15, and that's her family owned it, and she had to get up at 4 every morning and go out and roll the tennis court with a big log on and a couple of things, and yeah. And then that gradually after that, then there was a couple of different marinas that went belly up all the time because marinas generally do that, and a bigger store for a while as well. And because this was like, once we got the car, we could actually go to the gorge, and that was it was like far away enough from home that we were allowed to get a treat, whereas, you know, Bergie's was just right there, so no, we can't. So, yeah. So that's.
You were telling me about the postal delivery.
Oh yeah, well that was with this or the other one, the post office one.
No, when you had to carry the mail across.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we would have to do that, and that went from that bridge to that bridge. Yeah, it had washed out a number of times, but this was the worst one by far. And the mail also suffered a setback about, well, less than 15 years ago. There was a storm that took out, well, there was a 9-day power outage, and there was like poles snapped off and stuff. It was a huge storm, and a giant tree came down just where the church is in Whaletown across the road, and nobody local could cut it out because it was too dangerous, because it was on the top of a little cabin that was in there, and any attempt to move it, if you weren't, you know, could have related, you know, could have, you know, smashed the house or something. So it was a whole month. Joan Gordon would carry the mail up in the sacks, and the postmaster from Manson's would crawl under the tree and get the mail sacks and, and then bring them down back. Yeah. So, and then hand off his own. Yeah. So mail delivery had its setbacks here too at times. Yeah. Yeah. So it must be, yeah, there's the, oh, and this is the teenagers square dancing at Cortes Day.
The sideburn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's my sister Johnny with Carrie Burnett there. And I don't know who all, but yeah, I thought that was kind of cool because Cortes Day's been going on for a long time. You know, this was before nail sale and bail. Yeah. Would that, hey Bruce, would that have been your dad playing maybe for the square dancers, do you think? Yeah, that's what I was imagining. Yeah.
Isn't that at Manson's Spit?
Yeah, that's, no, not the Spit. The Fiesta was at the Spit. Oh, wait a sec, maybe this is, no. Smelt Bay, I think Smelt Bay. There was another party called the Fiesta at the Spit, but I think this is at Smelt Bay. Because the Spit is like, it was all closed in with trees. So, yeah. But anyway, that's, yeah, you could be right. And I put this in because it's the world's smallest post office, I'm pretty sure. They're close. So this was the Cortes Bay post office. Yeah, yeah. And it was down by the wharf, and, you know, I was pretty impressed by its minuscule size, yeah. Okay, we are, let's see what we got left here. Oh, yeah, okay, this is, you know, I showed you the picture of Rosita and her dancers, and that was like what would you call it, like, you know, it predated lip syncs and stuff, but I don't remember what it was called. Gladbag, that's what it was called. So this is Don McLean, or otherwise known as Dangerous Don McClam, and that's my sister Chris preparing him to do a drag act where he dresses in drag and lip syncs to Beautiful Secondhand Rose. This was in the 70s. Yeah. So I think we got, oh yeah, okay. Well, what I thought was we need a representative hippie here. And Catherine, is that right? Yes. Yeah. Okay, so this was Arn Saba, and he was sitting in our house playing the dulcimer and providing atmosphere for our art gallery. Yeah. Oh, cool. I know, it's beautiful. And also, Arn is a pioneer transgender person who is now Catherine and has been for a long time. Yeah, a long time. Yeah. But anyway, I just thought my mom really liked that picture. And I really like it too. So, and you know, the thing is that if there was a little more time for, say, 1,000 more slides, we'd get, you know, variety. But anyway, yeah.
That's your last slide.
Okay, that's my last slide. So questions from the floor. You know, I mean, we just barely touched on island life here, of course.
When did your family leave the house on the ocean?
My dad passed away in 2003, and my mom sold up and left because it had been their dream, and they were happy there and had a wonderful life, and she just didn't want to be there without him. Yeah, so 2004. And then it was sold accidentally to, you know, a notorious drug dealer. She didn't mean to, she wouldn't have if she'd known. But then after that, it was bought by the Bose, one of the Bose's daughters, Yvonne, and still is in that family. Yeah, so it kind of came back to Whaletown again. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Anything else?
All right,
Well,
well, thank you all.
Thank you so much. And if I've, misconstructed any historical facts, as I am in a museum, I'm sorry. We have to go in situations like this, we partly go on family legend, so. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Brigid.
Oh, my
And
pleasure.
Folks, there's now, there's some coffee, tea, and a few condiments at the back there, cookies and whatnot, and feel free to hang out.
Thank you.
Have conversation, talk to Brigid, ask questions, and if anybody wants to be a speaker in the future, feel free to come up and talk to me, and we'll set you all up for something happening in the future. So have a great Mother's Day. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you
Thanks
so
all for
much.
coming.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brigid. That's awesome.
My wife's dad was Canadian Scottish.
Oh,
Met her mum in England.
no. Seriously?
Yeah, her mum was in the women's army.
Yeah, she was. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Oh, that's
and they
amazing.
married, and he came back first, and she came back on the Queen Mary.
Right. That's amazing. Thank you for that so much. Yeah, that is, yeah.
About how
What's that?
your family just well spread, and how Gordon Alberti met a guy from Victoria, but in England.
Yeah, I know. It's just amazing. I love these. I love how it goes, Yeah. Okay. I guess I give this back to. Oh, my pleasure, sweetie. Absolutely.
Yeah. And just imagine how it would have been being a nurse, like, despite yourself, you're like, it's not really my official position. It's like
Right.
nobody else is going to do it. So.
No, well, exactly. Yeah, I can tell mostly local stories about, me and my friends and like that, but yeah.
That was fun. It brought back, when you're talking about the phone,
Sure.
remember
Absolutely.
the phone?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bill Matthews and
Yeah.
Uncle Harry strung a line between the Matthews place over the
Over the
sidewalks.
catwalk, yeah.
And
Yeah.
they had their own private line.
Yeah.
Bevan,
Right. Yeah, a lot of people did stuff like that in those days. Well, even
a
as
phone like that is still in them stairway.
well, I have to tell. I'll tell you his phone story, but I got to get Helen involved in this one. Okay. So just for one sec. Excuse me. We're just talking.
Janice McLean is coming here
Okay.
in June, I think.
Really? We were just talking about the olden days of the phones, and I just had to of the telephones, and I just had to add to that story about when I was on my float house and I got an illegal phone put into your house. Remember that? And the guy who was the phone guy would put the illegal phones in because he wanted them done properly. And then Art Monk helped me string it down through the bush, down to my float house, and then we put a pulley